Welcome to our second episode of Age Reversal. Today, we're going to talk about three components: NMN, Metformin, and Rapamycin. They work a little bit differently. NMN really focuses on the mitochondria and fueling it. In that sense, it's a precursor to NAD. Metformin looks at lowering our blood sugar and is used by diabetics, and we're going to see how that works for us in longevity. And we're going to see what the science says about these and which one should you take, which one should you drop, which one is a high. That and all in today's episode. Okay, so NMN, which turns into NAD, which fuels our mitochondria to produce ATP. That's what we need to live. That's what our cells need. All right. How did this story go up? We have to go to Harvard and we have to go to Dr. St. Clair, who has a little backstory. In the mid-2000s, his research on mice that resveratrol comes out of wine, Mediterranean diet, all keys here, had an effect on older mice that they saw that was age reversal in muscle structure and in complete organism. So this was the first time he came to the forefront, him and his team, and really looked at how do we reverse aging and what are the components that we could use. Then in 2013, he really hit it off with the NMN story, or the NAD story. NMN is the precursor. NAD is the fuel to help fuel the mitochondria to produce ATP. Now, our mitochondria are in each cell. This is the engine, and they have to produce ATP constantly and in bucket loads for us to do what we do, to think how we think. Everything we do, everything we are is that. Okay, not existentially and all this, but biologically, I'm talking. All right. When we look at NAD and what it does, it showed that it had a novel way of connecting with sirtuins, and sirtuins are longevity genes that can be switched on. It really, with age, we see that NAD levels drop, and so does SIRT1. And when this happens, the signaling pathway stops, the fuel stops, and you can see the difference between kids that have full energy and elderly people that are just barely walking and barely making the day and having to sleep a lot, etc. That's mitochondrial function. And not only that, but all of a sudden, if the mitochondria dysfunctions, you don't have protection. You don't have the energy to restore DNA. Cognitive function goes wrong. Everything starts falling apart. This is what we see with aging. So this was a real find. And in animal studies, it proved to be phenomenal. Study after study that was done proved to do what it said it would do. Maintenance or repair of DNA, safeguard genomic stability, autophagy, metabolic pathways, maintenance, just phenomenal. What happened? Okay, first, before we go into what happened, let's look at when these levels drop with age. Again, energy decrease, DNA repair failure, genomic instability, inflammation. And we know inflammation wreaks havoc. Okay, it's the building block for a chronic disease. Cellular senescence means zombie cells, okay, that our body doesn't get rid of. You don't want those. And neurodegeneration. So the basis and the basics still are this, all right? To have healthy mitochondria, we need to get good nutrition. We need to reduce calories. So we need to have a very good level of body fat, meaning a low level of body fat. We need to be lean because it's stress mimetics that counts here. And we talked about stress mimetics. If we introduce stress mimetics, we activate these genes that cause the reversal or slowing of aging. And if we're fed all day, we ain't doing that. when we look at all of this, production, ATP, and the DNA repair. So now you understand why NMN, the precursor, or NR, the precursor to NAD, and trying to boost the NAD is so important. Okay, here we go. Animal studies were perfect. Then it came to humans. Not very few studies found any effect. Yes, they did see NAD levels increase, but that was it. And the effects that we were expecting or that we saw in animals didn't come over as much into humans. There were some, but it wasn't enough. So why is that? Why is it different with humans? I think we have to look at the pathway for that. And I'm going to give you 2 clues. There's 2 ways that NAD fuel comes to the mitochondria. One is from the liver. Okay, the liver makes some, but most of it is recycling. And so it recycles. And in this recycling, NAD breaks down to nicotinamide and recycles into NAD. As we age, an enzyme critical to the recycling process drops. And this is our first clue. It's NAM. When this drops, no matter how much NAD you tried feeding or NMN you tried feeding, the precursor, there's a cog in the machine missing, all right, which is NAMT, PT, NAMPT. When this drops, no matter how much fuel you put in, it's not going to work more efficiently. It's not going to do more work. So this is our first flaw. It's like a drag car. Like you got a dragster and you're putting more fuel in it, but you got a broken oil line. You're not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go fast. It's going to spurt. It's going to have all kinds of problems. This is one of the areas we need to look at. Okay, how do we fix that? How do we upgrade that as we age? The other area is chronic low inflammation. And this is where we see a drop in CD38. We'll talk about CD38 again. CD38 is a marker for inflammation in the body. And when there's inflammation, it's like your dragster, your quarter-mile race car, engine's overheating. And you know what we do? You see it on the shows. If you've ever seen a drag race, they're putting ice on the engine. They're cooling it down for the race because that engine needs to be as cool as possible to run as fast as possible. So when you got chronic inflammation going in, heat chronically, you're damaging that whole process. So this is another one in that CD38 that we need to look at. So those are the 2 things I think initially right off the bat that we have to look at before we will see different results with NMN. But as of now, I've taken it. I stopped taking it. I would suggest not taking it. It doesn't have enough. It doesn't bring enough to the table. Let's move on to metformin. Metformin has a different working. Metformin is used by diabetics, and what it happens is at the hepatic level, at the liver, it induces gluconeogenesis. So really what's happening is that it opposes the action of glucagon. It lowers blood glucoses. So it ups AMPK, and it basically inhibits mTOR. And we're going to talk about that in this sense. But the first study that was done, and this was about 15 years back or something, showed that people with diabetes type 2 that were on metformin had a longer expectancy of life than healthy people that weren't taking metformin. So imagine that. People with type 2 diabetes extending their life because of the use of metformin longer than someone that didn't have diabetes. And now that was like groundbreaking. Okay. Newer studies have proven that theory to be incorrect. The newer studies, and I believe are more realistic, saying someone that is healthy will still live longer. But again, the person that is either pre-diabetic or has type 2 diabetes, if they're taking metformin, they will live longer and they will start approaching that of a healthy person's lifespan. All right, so this is great. This is intriguing. This is, okay, and it's something that we can get with a prescription, okay? But if it really does this, it should also help people that are healthy, correct? Yeah. And a lot of people thought, yeah, okay, because why? We have an elevated AMP ATP ratio, which also leads to the activation of AMPK pathway, which AMPK starts dumping glucose into the muscle. It activates the AMPK protein. It inhibits the actions of mTORC1. And when mTORC1 is downregulated, we actually see that we extend life. Why? It downregulates pathways involved in protein synthesis, cell survival, cell growth, and proliferation. It actually stops cells from growing too fast, moving too fast. Now, this is where you get into this nuance where we do need mTORC1 upregulated. When we exercise, when we do weight training, we do sprinting, when we do all this stuff, we need it because we need protein synthesis. It's critical for muscle health. It's critical to keep our muscles as we age. So what do we have to do? We have to pulse this. All right. We have to go in times where we actually downregulate mTOR for longevity. And then for health, for our health span, there's times we need to bring it up. We just can't keep it up constantly. Okay. And that's where the stress mimetics come in. That's where, when we do fasting comes in, we have this whole time that we're not eating, where our body thinks, hey, we might be going into starvation mode. That's where it triggers these components, these positive effects of downregulating mTOR. That's why we have to see how we can up and downregulate that. Now, Peter Attia was a big proponent of metformin, and so were many other doctors, but he stopped taking it. And this is why. He saw that at rest, he was getting elevated lactate levels at rest. And when he was doing his zone 2, his lactate levels were too high. So what was happening is that metformin works in a way around the mitochondria where it shuts down the electrical charges that are there, and basically damages the mitochondria in a certain way where it impairs oxyphosphorylation. So it impairs the uptake of oxygen, right? And when that happens, the body has to run on an alternate fuel, lactate. So this is where lactate comes in, okay? It's like the mitochondria is this constantly getting out of breath, right? We're running along and running hard, but we can feel that lactate coming in. We're sprinting, we can feel that lactate coming in. That's what's happening with the mitochondria. And this is one of the workings of metformin. And if this is the working, then for a healthy person that's trying to achieve optimal health, no bueno. We cannot be going into this lactate levels at rest. We can't be going into lactate levels when we exercise. And we can't be damaging our mitochondria. It doesn't work for us. He stopped taking it. Now, there's another trial, the TAME trial, which will be done in a couple of years, which will tell us more detail about these pathways. And maybe that changes things. We'll see. But as of now, this is another one, metformin, that I took and I'm not taking. Thirdly, rapamycin. Well, rapamycin is a geroprotectant. Okay, it's going to protect us from old age diseases, chronic diseases, certain cancers. It even helps our gut health by intervening in the mitochondria DNA, mtDNA, basically unraveling it so that it's just healing the DNA of the mitochondria in the gut, making the gut perform better. And gut health means good health. With this protection, it works like a prophylactic for when we age. This is one we need to be considering. Now, there needs to be more research coming in, but this is the one I would be taking if I were you, because it really directly targets mTOR pathway, which is the growth pathway, and we have overgrowth yet when we age. mTOR is upregulated because our body feels like we're losing muscle mass, we're losing everything. We need to upgrade. We need to go into protein synthesis, and then it starts overloading the mitochondria. And this is where the mitochondria is not resting to do autophagy of the cell. It's not resting to do DNA repair. We need to calm that down. Rapamycin does that. Rapamycin, yes, this is where we need. So when we look at the 3 compounds that are making headlines in age reversal, we're looking at NMN or NR. We're looking at Metformin. And lastly, Rapamycin. NMN has been trials with animals, works perfectly, in humans, less than. And the reason, I think one of the reasons is because we got, with age, NAD drops, and we also have a drop in NAMPT, which basically is one of the things needed for NMN to be used as a fuel within the mitochondria. Secondly, we also see an increase of CD38, which is an inflammatory marker. So you got inflammation, chronic inflammation going. When chronic inflammation is going, it's like a car overheating. You're not going to get the mitochondria to function as good. So these are the 2 issues that we need to resolve to make NMN, the precursor to NAD, work for our mitochondria. One, that one's off the shelf. Second one, metformin, known as a diabetic drug. If you're pre-diabetic or you're diabetic, this is a great drug to use. It basically inhibits glucogenesis at the liver, meaning less sugar, takes the sugar out of your bloodstream. Phenomenal. Helps you age better and longer if you have diabetes. If you are healthy, though, there is an issue with it. First studies showed that, yes, it helped. Second studies, less. And the reason is because in the mitochondria, when that whole process is running, what's happening is it's basically robbing the mitochondria of oxygen. In that way, downregulating mTOR pathway. When it does that, it damages the mitochondria. If you're a healthy person, you need to up your cardiovascular health. You need to up your strength for longevity, and especially for health span, only for lifespan. This becomes a problem because you're going to need your mitochondria to be working at full tilt. Metformin doesn't allow that. Off the table. This is where we need. Coming to you from Bodrum, Turkey. Yes, let's make this year the best ever. Let's get healthy. Let's get going. Get focused. Get your ikigai on full speed. Have a great year.